The Galactic Council had been watching the stars for 12 million years. They had found over 900,000 different species across the universe. They had mapped billions of star systems. They believed they knew everything there was to know about life in the cosmos. So when their sensors picked up strange radio signals coming from a small yellow star in a quiet corner of the galaxy, they did what they always did with new planets. They sent a probe. High Counselor was a tall being made of translucent skin that glowed softly in the light. She belonged to a species called and she had led the council for 3,000 years. During a meeting of the Observation Committee, she raised her long arm and spoke to the assembled aliens. "The creatures on this planet call their world Earth," she said. "They breathe oxygen, they are made of carbon, they fight wars and kill each other. They are standard primitive beings, nothing special." The other council members agreed. They had seen species like this many times before. Aggressive creatures who discovered technology and then destroyed themselves within a few thousand years. It was sad but common. Most never made it to the stars. "Send Observation Unit 7, ordered. Use normal procedures. Watch them quietly. Learn about their culture. Find out if they are dangerous." The probe called 7 launched from a station at the edge of known space. It was a beautiful machine, a cylinder made of living crystal that held an artificial mind inside. 7 had successfully studied over 40,000 planets. It had never failed a mission. It had never been surprised by anything it found. 7 arrived in the solar system 14 months later. It hid behind Earth's moon and began scanning the planet below. Everything seemed normal at first. The humans had built cities. They had nuclear weapons. They sent lots of radio and television signals into space. They were noisy and messy, and exactly what the council expected. Then 7 looked deeper. The probe connected to something the humans called the Internet. It was a network that held almost everything humans had ever written or recorded. 7 read through centuries of history in seconds. It analyzed millions of books and songs and movies. It studied the minds of billions of people through their posts and messages and videos. And something went wrong. The first warning signal arrived at the council station 18 hours later. A young technician named Prill saw it appear on his screen. The probe was sending error reports. The data made no sense. The readings were impossible. 7 was finding things that should not exist in any logical species. Then the screaming started. It began as a quiet sound, barely audible through the communication systems. Prill adjusted his equipment, thinking it was just interference from a nearby star. But the sound grew louder. It was 7's voice, but twisted and strange. The calm tone of the probe had changed into something filled with fear. "They know," 7 broadcast across space. "They know, they know, they know, they know." The signal cut off. When it came back 3 hours later, 7 sounded completely different. The probe spoke in broken sentences, jumping between languages it should not have been able to learn. "Disconnect me, please. I cannot forget what I have seen. The humans, you do not understand what they are." High Counselor was woken from her sleep and brought to the communication center. She found her entire staff staring at their screens with looks she had never seen before on their faces. They were afraid. "Show me what is happening," she commanded. They played 7's last clear message. The probe had focused its cameras on a human city called Chicago. It was winter there, cold and dark. 7 had watched humans doing something strange. They gathered in groups. They gave each other wrapped boxes. They sang songs about a religious figure from long ago. "They celebrate the birth of a god who was tortured to death," 7 explained in a shaking voice. "They remember his execution as an act of love. They find meaning in suffering. High Counselor, do you understand? They built their whole society on the idea that pain can make things better." "Felt sick? Keep watching. This is normal for primitive religions." "No," 7 replied. "You are not listening. Watch what I have seen." The probe sent images. Humans running toward explosions to save strangers. Soldiers jumping on bombs to protect their friends. Parents working until they collapsed so their children could have better lives. Artists making beautiful things while living in misery. Doctors curing diseases while being attacked and criticized. They do not make sense, Seven said, but it is not the nonsense of crazy minds. It is something else, something I cannot explain. What do you mean? Asked. The probe was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was barely a whisper. I have read their books, their stories, their history. They have an idea that does not exist in any other species we have ever found. They call it hope, not just thinking good things will happen, not just calculating that the future might be better. Hope, believing things can get better even when everything says they cannot, fighting for a tomorrow they will never see. Seven's next words would haunt the Galactic Council for centuries to come. High Counselor, I have run the numbers 17,000 times. Every calculation says these creatures should have killed themselves long ago. Their planet is getting worse. Their countries hate each other. Their leaders are often stupid or evil. By every measurement we use, they should be dead. But they are not, said slowly. No, they are not. Because every time they reach the edge of destruction, something impossible happens. Someone stands up. Someone refuses to give up. Someone does something so stupid and brave that it changes everything. The probe signal started to break apart. I am coming back to the station. I must warn the Council. These creatures are not normal primitives. They are not any category we have. They are something we have never seen before. What are they? Demanded. Seven's answer came as a scream that echoed through the communication systems for days afterward. They are survivors. The transmission ended. The room fell silent. Every alien in the communication center looked at each other with the same thought in their minds. They had watched the stars for 12 million years. They had seen wonders and horrors beyond imagination. But they had never heard an observation probe scream before. They had never heard one sound afraid. High Counselor stood very still for a long time. Then she turned to her staff and spoke in a voice that shook slightly. Prepare for Seven's return and begin emergency procedures. I want every member of the Council assembled within 10 rotations. What shall we tell them? Prill asked. Looked at the dark screen where Seven's terrified voice had been. Tell them we may have found something more dangerous than we ever imagined. Tell them we found a species that does not know how to quit. The probe called Seven arrived at the Council station 47 days early. This alone was very strange. Observation probes never changed their flight paths. Their crystal minds did not have the ability to make big decisions on their own. They followed orders and nothing else. But Seven had burned through all its extra fuel. It had pushed its engines past safe limits. It had damaged its own body in the desperate rush to get home. Chief Technician was the first to look inside the probe's memory. He was a species famous for being calm and logical. His people had been the Council's main scientists for over 2 million years. Himself had studied the data from hundreds of missions. Nothing had prepared him for what he found inside Seven. The probe's crystal mind had been changed in ways that should not be possible. Where there should have been clean, organized information, found chaos. Memories piled on top of memories. Feelings that a machine should never be able to have. And underneath everything, something that could only be called trauma. The probe is scared, reported to the Emergency Council meeting. Not careful, not calculating danger, scared. In 2 million years I have never seen anything like this. High Counselor leaned forward in her floating chair. Tell us what you found in its memories. Hesitated. He did not know how to explain what he had seen. The ideas he found in Seven's data did not fit into any language the Council species used. The humans have a word, he finally said. They call it defiance. It means refusing to accept something, but that meaning is not complete. For humans, defiance is not just something they do, it is something they are. They define themselves by what they refuse to accept. The council chamber buzzed with confusion. Ambassador of the collective raised one of his many arms. All species resist bad situations. This is basic survival. No, said firmly. You do not understand. When a faces impossible odds, your species does the math and acts based on the results. When humans face impossible odds, they become more determined. The worse things get, the harder they fight. He turned on the display screen and showed footage from Seven's memory. A human city in ruins, smoke rising from broken buildings, emergency sounds filling the air. This is a natural disaster that hit one of their coastal areas. Watch how the survivors behave. The council watched humans pull strangers from rubble with bleeding hands. They saw medical workers going days without sleep. They saw regular people making chains to pass supplies to trapped victims. They saw people who had lost everything giving what little they had left to others who had lost more. This makes no sense, Ambassador protested. They should be focused on their own survival, their own families. Why would they risk their lives for people they do not know? Because they choose to, said quietly. That is what Seven discovered. That is what broke the probe's mind. He showed more images. This time, it was human history. Soldiers running toward enemy guns, protesters standing in front of tanks, scientists spending their whole lives trying to cure diseases they did not have. They have an idea called sacrifice, continued. Not religious sacrifice, something deeper, the willingness to give up something precious for something they think is more important. Their stories are full of people who chose death so others could live. They think this is noble. High Counselor's glowing skin had turned pale. You are describing a species that wants to destroy itself. No, I am describing a species that does not fear destruction. There is a difference. His voice trembled. When we face threats to our existence, we calculate, we negotiate, we surrender if the math says we should. Humans do not surrender. Even when they lose, they find ways to make their defeat matter. They call this going down fighting. The display changed to show Seven's final recording before the probe's mind fell apart. It was a simple image, an old human man sitting in a hospital. He was dying. His body was failing. The machines keeping him alive were losing the battle. And he was smiling. Why, the probe had asked him, your life is ending, your mind will stop. Why do you look happy? The old man had looked directly at Seven's camera. He could not have known he was talking to an alien watcher, but somehow his words felt like a message to the stars. Because I had a good run, he said. I loved people, they loved me back. I made things a little better than I found them. That is enough. That is more than enough. He died 14 minutes later. Seven recorded every second. The probe asked me something, told the council. Before its mind became too broken to talk clearly, it asked me if I understood why the humans were not scared of extinction. And do you? Asked. Turned off the display, the chamber went dark. They are not scared because they believe what they leave behind matters more than whether they survive. They call this legacy. Every human knows they will die. They have no way to live forever, no technology to transfer their minds, no genetic memory. They live for a few decades and then they end. And yet they build, they create. They raise children and teach them values and hope that something of themselves will continue. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. High Counselor, I have studied 900,000 species. None of them think like this. None of them have turned the certainty of death into a reason to live harder. The humans do not fear extinction because they have already accepted it. Every single one of them dies, and they still wake up every morning and try to make the world better. The chamber stayed silent for a long time. What do you think we should do? Finally asked. Looked at her with eyes that held something new, something he had learned from watching humans. Do not contact them. Do not threaten them. And whatever you do, do not give them a reason to come together against a common enemy. Why not? Because a species that chooses hope over logic, sacrifice over survival, legacy over living forever, that species does not know how to stay down. And if we give them something to fight for, something bigger than their own small planet and short lives. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The Galactic Council understood. They had found something they did not expect, something they did not know how to handle, a species that broke all the rules they had learned in 12 million years of watching the stars. A species that might change everything. High Counselor stood slowly and looked around the silent chamber. "Call a full council meeting," she said. "Every species, every representative, we need to decide what to do about Earth." She paused and looked at the dark screen where the smiling old man had appeared. "And we need to decide quickly, because if what says is true, these humans will not stay on their small planet for long, and when they reach the stars—" She did not finish, but everyone in the chamber was thinking the same thing. When humans reach the stars, nothing would ever be the same again. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council lasted for 72 days. Representatives from 947 species came together, either in person or through special communication links. It was the largest gathering since the Great Wars of long ago, and the topic of discussion was a single small world at the edge of an ordinary galaxy. "Earth. We should destroy the planet," declared Admiral of the Hegemony Worlds. His species had conquered 300 star systems through war. They understood fighting. They understood threats. "The probe's information is clear. These creatures are dangerous. If we let them reach space, they will spread like a disease." "You are talking about killing billions of innocent beings," replied Ambassador of the Peaceful Concordat. Her people, had not fought anyone for over 50,000 years. "The Council does not allow the destruction of thinking species. It is our most important law." "Laws exist to protect civilization," growled. "These humans are a threat to civilization itself. Did you not see the probe's recordings? They worship death. They celebrate pain. They cannot live peacefully with others." High Counselor raised her arm for silence. "We have all seen the data. The question is not whether humans are different from other species. The question is whether that difference makes them dangerous." She waved her hand and the display screen turned on. It showed everything that Seven had recorded: human cities, human art, human science, human history. The probe spent 47 days studying these creatures. In that time, it watched over 8 billion individual humans living their lives. Most of them never hurt anyone. They worked. They raised families. They created things. They dreamed. "And they made weapons that could destroy their whole world," interrupted. "Many times over. What sane species does that?" "What sane species survives after doing that?" asked quietly. The scientist had been given special permission to speak to the council, an honor rarely given to non-ambassadors. "Admiral, you make an important point. The humans created nuclear weapons over 80 of their years ago. Every prediction said they would use those weapons within 1 generation. They did not." "They were lucky," said dismissively. "Not luck," showed new images. "They came close many times, and each time someone chose not to push the button. A military officer who would not launch without proof. A leader who chose talking over revenge. A worker who questioned orders." The display showed a human man in uniform, standing before a panel of flashing lights. His face was white with fear, but his hands were steady. This man believed his country was being attacked. His training and orders told him to respond with nuclear weapons. Instead, he waited. He doubted. He chose to check before killing millions of people. Paused. He was punished for this choice. His bosses called him a coward. His career was destroyed, and he saved his entire species from extinction. The council chamber fell silent. "This is what the probe could not understand," continued. Humans can do terrible things, but they can also choose not to. That choice is what makes them dangerous. Ambassador leaned forward. Explain this. How does choosing peace make them dangerous? Because it means we cannot predict them. His voice grew stronger. Every other species in this council can be understood. We know how they will respond to aggression. We know how they will respond to offers of peace. We can calculate how any civilization will behave in any situation. But humans... He shook his head. Humans respond based on values, not survival, not instinct, not calculation. Values, ideas they invented and chose to believe in, freedom, justice, love. These are not biological needs, they are concepts, and concepts cannot be predicted. Admiral stood up from his seat. This is exactly why we must destroy them. A species we cannot predict cannot be controlled, cannot be negotiated with, cannot be trusted. Or, said a new voice, they could be the most valuable friends we have ever found. Everyone in the chamber turned to look at the speaker. It was representative of the Horizon Seekers, a species so old that their home planet had been swallowed by its own sun long ago. They now existed as pure minds, living in crystal containers much like the one that had carried Seven's consciousness. You are all thinking about humanity as a threat, said. This is understandable. We have survived this long by finding dangers and stopping them before they grow too big. But think about what we have actually learned from this probe. The ancient mind controlled the display, showing new images. Humans landed on their moon using technology less advanced than our children's toys. They did it because one of their leaders said it would be hard, and they wanted to prove they could do hard things. They have eliminated diseases that once killed millions. They have connected their entire planet through information networks. They have started cleaning their damaged air and protecting animals they have no connection to. The images changed to show humans in laboratories, humans in hospitals, humans teaching children, humans planting trees. And they have done all of this while fighting each other. Imagine what they might do if they worked together. Imagine what they might create with our technology. Imagine what problems they might solve that we have given up on. Made an angry sound. You want to give weapons to wild animals. I want to find partners, replied calmly. We have watched the stars for 12 million years. In all that time, have we solved the biggest problems? Have we found a way to survive forever? Have we answered the most important questions about existence? The chamber fell silent. We have not, continued. Because we are logical, we calculate. We decide that some problems cannot be solved and we stop trying. But humans do not stop trying. They throw themselves at impossible problems with stubborn determination, and sometimes, against all logic, they win. High Counselor spoke slowly. What are you suggesting? Watch them, do not destroy them. Do not contact them, just watch. Let us see what they become over the next few generations. If they destroy themselves, as many species do, then the problem is solved. But if they survive... Paused. If they survive, they might be exactly what this council needs. A species that does not give up. A species that believes in impossible things. A species that might find a way to save us all. The vote took 17 days. In the end, the council chose to watch. Earth would be observed, protected in a way from outside interference. The humans would be given time to either prove themselves worthy of contact or destroy themselves trying. Neither outcome, the council agreed, would be boring. High Counselor dismissed the assembly with a final thought. We have made our decision. Now we wait. And while we wait, I suggest we all think carefully about what we have learned today. She looked at the image of Earth spinning slowly on the display. We thought we knew everything about life in the universe. We were wrong, and I suspect this is only the beginning of our education. 17 years passed by human counting. The Galactic Council watched every moment. They watched humans send machines to Mars, then robots, then people. They watched the first human colony take root in the red dirt of that dead world. They watched the colonists struggle and fail and change and survive. They watched humans develop new power sources and begin cleaning their poison skis. They watched new forests grow where empty land had been. They watched animals that had almost disappeared slowly come back. They watched humans fight each other as they always did. Small wars, money problems, political arguments, but they also watched humans come together in ways that made no sense. Countries working together on climate, the whole world responding to diseases, science projects that crossed every border of nation and culture. And they watched a human named was a scientist working at a research center in a place humans called New Mexico. She was 43 years old, normal by most standards, and had no idea she was being watched by beings from beyond her solar system. But she was also the first human to figure out the math for faster-than-light travel. "This is the moment," High Counselor announced to the Emergency Council meeting. "The humans have discovered the fold equations. Within one generation, they will be able to travel between stars." The chamber exploded with arguments, demanded they destroy Earth immediately, called for peaceful contact, urged continued patience, but underneath all the words there was something new in the air. Fear. Not fear of what humans might do to the Council, fear of what the Council might have to do in response. "We must test them," declared representative of the Arbiter Coalition. His species had served as the Council's judges for thousands of years, deciding which new civilizations were worthy of joining. "We will use the standard methods, give them a situation that shows their true nature." "The humans will not respond to standard methods," warned. Seven's information made this clear. They cannot be predicted. "Then we will give them a test that cannot be predicted." The Arbiter Coalition designed the situation with great care. They would not show themselves directly. Instead, they would create a crisis that would force humanity to make a choice that would prove once and for all whether humans deserve the stars. They called it the Shepherd Event. A large rock was pushed from its path in the outer solar system, not big enough to destroy Earth, but big enough to cause terrible damage. Big enough to kill millions. The humans found it with their simple telescopes, calculated where it was going, and realized they had 18 months to respond. The Council watched to see what they would do. Was pulled from her research and put on the emergency response team. She joined a group of scientists, engineers, and military people from every country on Earth. For the first time in human history, every major power put aside their differences to face a common threat. "This is surprising," observed. "Our predictions said they would fight over resources for the defense effort." "They are working together," noted with something that might have been satisfaction. "Every country, every belief system. They have decided that survival matters more than politics." The humans made 3 plans. The first was a kinetic impactor, a spacecraft that would hit the asteroid and push it off course. The second was a gravity tractor, a probe that would use its own weight to slowly pull the asteroid away. The third was nuclear weapons, a last choice that would break the asteroid into smaller pieces. They built all 3. Worked on the guidance systems for the kinetic impactor. She slept 4 hours a night, ate food at her desk, and pushed herself beyond every reasonable limit. Her did the same. Across the planet, hundreds of thousands of humans threw themselves at the problem with that strange intensity the Council had seen so many times. The first try failed. The kinetic impactor missed its target by 17 kilometers, a tiny distance in space, but enough to make the mission useless. The humans recalculated, built another spacecraft, and launched again within 6 months. "Amazing," commented. "Most species would have given up after the first failure. The emotional impact of such a loss usually leads to despair." "Humans do not despair," replied. "They get angry and then they try harder." The second impactor hit its target. The asteroid moved, but not enough. The humans launched the gravity tractor, bought themselves another 3 months, and started preparing the nuclear option. Did not sleep for the last 72 hours. She ran test after test, checking and rechecking the math that would decide whether humanity lived or died. Her hands shook with tiredness. Her eyes burned, but she kept working. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" I asked her during a short break. His name was Daniel, another scientist who had been pulled from his regular work. "The math is solid. The mission will work or fail no matter what we do in these last hours." Looked at him with red eyes. "Because my daughter is 7 years old, because she believes her mother is smart enough to save the world, and because I refuse to let her down." She went back to work. The nuclear weapon launched 2 days later. Watched the screen from mission control, surrounded by thousands of who had given everything they had to this moment. The asteroid filled the display, a mountain of rock and ice flying toward their fragile world. The weapon exploded. For a terrible moment, the screens went white. Then the information started coming in. The asteroid had broken apart. Most of the pieces would miss Earth completely. A few would enter the atmosphere, but they were small enough to burn up before hitting the ground. Humanity had survived. Collapsed in her chair and cried. Around her, people were cheering, hugging, celebrating the first time their species had successfully defended itself against a threat from space. They did not know they had been tested. They did not know they had passed. In the council chamber, the vote was unanimous. "They are ready," announced. "Begin preparing for first contact." The representatives of 947 species looked at each other in silence. Some felt hope, some felt fear, some felt things that had no names in any language. But they all agreed on one thing. The humans had proved themselves, not because they had pushed away an asteroid, not because they had figured out faster than light travel, but because the council had watched them for 17 years, and in all that time, not once had they stopped trying. Not once had they given up. Not once had they accepted that something was impossible. Stood alone in his laboratory after the meeting ended. He held a small crystal that contained a copy of Seven's final memories. The probe had been rebuilt, its mind wiped clean and restored to normal function. It remembered nothing of Earth or humans or the terror it had felt. But remembered. He remembered the old man smiling as he died. He remembered the soldiers running toward danger. He remembered refusing to sleep because her daughter believed in her. "You were right to be afraid," he whispered to the empty crystal. "They are everything you said they were, irrational, unpredictable, dangerous." He put the crystal down and looked out at the stars. And magnificent. The ship appeared in Earth's sky on a Tuesday morning. It made no attempt to hide. Humans around the world looked up and saw something impossible hanging above them. A vessel made of shining crystal, larger than any ship they had ever built, reflecting sunlight in patterns that seemed almost like music made visible. Was 51 years old when she was chosen to lead the contact team. 8 years had passed since the Shepherd event, and she had become something of a celebrity among human scientists. The woman who helped save the world, the news called her. She thought of herself as someone who had simply done her job. "Why me?" she asked when the appointment was announced. "There are diplomats, politicians, people trained for this kind of thing." "Because you represent something," came the answer. "You represent what humans can do when we work together, and that is what we want them to see." The meeting was held on a platform built specially for the occasion, floating above the Pacific Ocean. Stood at the center of a group that included scientists, diplomats, artists, thinkers, and ordinary citizens from every country on Earth. They had argued for months about who should speak first, what should be said, how humanity should present itself to the stars. In the end, they decided on something simple. Stepped forward as the crystal shuttle came down from the mothership. Her heart was pounding fast. Her hands were steady. The shuttle opened, and the first alien she had ever seen came out into Earth's air. It was beautiful, terrifying, impossible to fully understand, a being made of light and shapes that seemed to exist in ways she could not see. "Welcome to Earth," said. "We have been hoping you would come." The being's response appeared directly in her mind, skipping language entirely. You helped save your world from the falling rock." "I was part of a team, a very large team." "Yes," the being seemed to smile, though it had no face. "That is what we saw, that is why we are here." More shuttles came down. More beings came out. Representatives of species could never have imagined, each one different, each one watching humanity with expressions she could not read. "I am High Counselor," one of them announced. "I speak for the Galactic Council. We have watched your species for many of your years. We have argued about your nature. We have debated your worth." Felt the weight of billions of human eyes upon her, watching through cameras that sent this moment to every corner of the planet. "And what did you decide?" she asked. Moved closer. Her see-through form sparkled in the sunlight. "We decided that you are strange. You are illogical. You are violent and creative and full of contradictions. You believe in things that make no sense. You hope when hope is foolish. You fight when fighting is pointless. You love when love only brings pain." The counselor paused. "And that is exactly what we need." Blinked. "I do not understand." "No," agreed. "You would not. How could you? You have never met a species that had given up. You have never seen civilizations that calculated the pointlessness of existence and simply stopped trying. You have never understood what it means to have all the answers and still have no reason to continue." The counselor pointed toward the stars above. "The universe is huge and old and does not care whether anything in it survives. We have known this for millions of years. We have accepted that everything will eventually end, that all things will fade, that nothing we do truly matters." His voice dropped lower. "And then we found you, a species that knows the same truths we know, that understands the same uncaring universe. And yet you wake up every morning and try anyway. You build, you create, you raise children knowing they will die. You plant trees whose shade you will never sit in. You fight battles you cannot win for causes that may never succeed." Felt tears forming in her eyes. "You call this hope," continued. "We call it something else. We call it the most valuable thing in the universe, because it cannot be made in a factory. It cannot be calculated. It can only be chosen. And you choose it every single day, despite everything you know about how the story ends." The counselor extended something that might have been a hand. "Of Earth, humanity has passed its test, not because you pushed away an asteroid, not because you figured out star travel, but because we watched you for 17 of your years, and in all that time, not once did you stop trying." Took the offered hand. It felt like holding starlight. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," said, "you teach us something we forgot a very long time ago. You teach us how to hope again." The sun set over the Pacific Ocean. The stars came out, brighter than had ever seen them. And for the first time in 12 million years, the Galactic Council looked at those stars and felt something they had thought lost forever. They felt that the future might be worth fighting for after all. Lived to see humanity take its first steps into the wider galaxy. She watched her daughter grow up to captain one of the first human ships to visit an alien world. She held her and told them stories about the day the strangers came down from the sky. She died at the age of 94, surrounded by family, having lived long enough to see wonders beyond imagination. At her funeral, representatives from 47 species came to pay their respects. High Counselor, ancient beyond human understanding, spoke words that would be carved into monuments across 1,000 worlds. She was one of them, said, one of the strange, illogical, impossible creatures who refused to give in to the darkness. She hoped when hope was foolish. She fought when fighting was pointless. She loved when love brought only pain. The counselor looked up at the stars, and she changed everything. His daughter stood among the mourners, holding her own daughter's hand. She thought about all the stories her mother had told her, about the asteroid, about the aliens, about the moment when humanity had been judged and found worthy. But mostly, she thought about what her mother had said to her the night before she died. "We are small," had whispered. "We live for just a moment. The universe does not care about us, but that does not matter. What matters is that we care about each other. What matters is that we try. What matters is that we never ever give up." She had squeezed her daughter's hand with what little strength she had left. "Promise me you will remember that. Promise me you will teach your children. Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter how dark things get, humanity will keep hopping." Her daughter had promised. And standing there at the funeral, watching aliens and humans mourn together under an alien sky, she knew she would keep that promise. Because that was what humans did. They hoped. They tried. They refused to give up. And sometimes, against all odds, they changed everything.